Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the football podcast, and what is that coming over the horizon? No, not a monster. It's the end of the football season. Not quite, though. There's still games to go through, and then there's all the end of season stuff to wrap up, and then there's more games, so it's not really the end of the season, so why would I bring it up? Yeah, while I ponder that, you could be clicking that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. What else? Oh yeah, leave a review. Reviews are big. They're a big help to the channel, and we really appreciate them. Anyway, enough of all that stuff. Let's get into the football. So, here we go. This is CookieCast, football podcast.
Recording in progress.
Yes. Those words we all love and enjoy. Welcome on in, ladies and gentlemen. It's week 42 of the football season, as it were. And us here at the CookieCast Podcast Network will take you through week 41's fixtures before we get to week 42's. Obviously, the people that are watching on YouTube will have noticed, hang on, there's only three faces there. Mr. Woodmansey unable to join us this evening for reasons that he may divulge next week. I'll just leave it as an open book. We'll leave it there. But yes, in his stead, I am joined by Messrs. Cook and Moore. How are we this week, gents?
I've finally broken out the shorts, so that can only be a bad thing.
It was certainly warm last week, as we discussed on the podcast. This week has been equally as toasty. Although there was quite the downpour in York yesterday. But today, a little late sprinkling of rain, but then back to nice and warm. It's Andy, you might be the only one who can answer this. Do you remember if you went into the Venetian in Vegas and you looked up at the ceiling and it looked like it was a paint? They'd painted basically the sky on the ceiling of the Venetian. The sky in York currently looks exactly like the ceiling of the Venetian.
That's what they used as a model for the sky in there.
So, the first of week 41's fixtures was Mr. Andrew Cook's adopted side, Manchester City. They were taking on Fulham at the Cottage, and it didn't take them long to start the scoring. Let's put it that way. 13 minutes. But it was an unusual goal scorer that got him off the mark in this one. Josko Gvardiol, with, I believe, his fourth goal in 7 games up to this point. Not often that you see people popping up from left back with the opening goal in the game. I can't actually remember the goal itself, as I was unfortunately I was out of the house, not watching this game at this particular time. But it was 1-0 going into half time, and then the second was scored on the 59th minute by Phil Foden. Surely at this point must be City's player of the season. He popped up on the 59th minute to make it 2-0. It was 3 on the 71st minute when Gvardiol again popped up with his second of the match. And then in the 95th minute, when the game was petering out, Issa Diop fouled. Who did he foul in the box? Let me have a look. It was a challenge on the eventual goal scorer Julian Alvarez. However, in the build-up to the penalty being taken by Mr. Alvarez, the captain Kyle Walker did actually go over to Gvardiol and offer him the ball to see if he wanted to take it to get his hat trick, which would have been a little bit of Premier League history, as no defender has ever scored a hat-trick in the Premier League, so that would have been one to tick off for the statisticians amongst us there. But no, ever the professional turned it down, and obviously the ball stayed with the designated penalty taker, which was Julian Alvarez, who dispatched the ball in the 5th minute of injury time to make it 4-0 to Man City on the day. Quite the thumping victory for the champions in waiting, it has to be said. Surprise, surprise, we all had picked Manchester City wins. Matt was the only person to give Fulham a goal, no less, picking Muniz. Annoyingly, I did see some of the footage, some of the coverage in the second half, and annoyingly, the commentator all throughout the game was calling him Ricardo Muniz. That's absolutely not his name. Rodrigo Muniz, I believe you'll find. But yes, he did not score, so Matt doesn't get a point for the Fulham goal scorer there. He did, however, have Foden and Haaland in his goal scorers, so does get a bonus point for the goal scorer there. Stuart gone 2-0 with Haaland and De Bruyne. Andy gone 2-0 with Haaland and Alvarez, so bonus point there for Andy. I'd gone 3-0 with Haaland, De Bruyne and Foden. So 2 points apiece for myself, Matt and Andy. Just the 1 point for Mr. Woodmansey. Our second game, which was also live on TV on the Saturday, saw Nottingham Forest taking on Chelsea. Now, I only caught bits of this game as well, as I was round at a friend's house and was busy playing with, entertaining their children, shall I say, in the garden. Playing with sounds a little bit disrespectful, but yes, I was entertaining the children.
It sounds a little bit Drake to me.
So I only caught bits of this game. So you'll have to fill in the blanks from Mr. Moore. How did this one play out?
I think, unfortunately for Sky, I think they thought that this was going to be like a game with a lot on it, and then Burnley and West Ham, early on in the afternoon, the fear was very much in that Forest were going to be going to the final day with a lot to play for, and fortunately both of them ended up losing, so effectively Forest effectively safe, not mathematically safe. There's the 12-goal swing. I forgot to check. I'm pretty sure, but possibly Luton have scored more goals than Forest, which is shocking. But yeah, barring the 12-goal swing, Forest are safe. They could have made it safe against Chelsea, which are a very Jekyll and Hyde team at the moment. They're very much on the positive thing. So, game started. Apparently, Forest really went for it, really attacking football. And then Chelsea scored their first, which Cole Palmer picked the ball up in that area between midfield and defence, ran at the defence, and I think something I was listening to the other day, they said it was almost like Montiel glitched in like an old school football game where he's running one way and then all of a sudden makes a right angle turn and runs completely the opposite way from his man. And obviously the kind of general kind of thing is that Murdoch is one of the fastest players in the league and Willy Bolly is absolutely not. To which obviously by the time Murdoch had controlled the ball and curled it round the keeper cells for 1-0. Thankfully Forest came back and Bolly also kind of I don't want to say made up, he didn't make a mistake. I think the thing for me is, and you'll enjoy this, is the run that Murillo made to win the free kick. He picked it up in his own half, like marauding run, and about 35 yards out was kind of bundled to the ground. Nice crossing from Dinked, kind of free kick from Gibbs White, headed in by Bolly. Don't know why it was checked for offside, it was blatantly on. 1-1. I think that's how it went.
Sorry, just jump in there. Such a lengthy check it seemed as well. It seemed like they were like checking it on the air for absolutely ages.
I mean, the only Forest players that could possibly have been off would be the two that were stood next to the defender that was playing all of them on. And it was just like, this is a complete waste of time. So equaliser there. Going into the second half, about 60 minutes in, I think. I can't think who picked up the ball. Nice bit of play on the Forest right. Switched it to the left to kind of pretty much the best player at Forest at the moment, Hudson-Odoi, who did what he seems to have been doing for the past few weeks, which is fake to go outside, cut inside, curl it around the keeper, goal. So 2-1, old boy rule. I didn't see the full game. I've just seen the highlights. Then apparently Hudson-Odoi got injured not long after that. So I was hobbling around the pitch, and Nuno left it 10 minutes to substitute him. In that time, Chelsea managed to attack. They brought on Reece James, who managed to attack the space. Second Chelsea goal. Should have predicted it. Thought about predicting it last week because he always seems to score against Forest, even when he's playing shit. Raheem Sterling. So ball spread out to the right. Montiel. Was it Montiel this time? Or was it Aina this time? Montiel had been taken off at this point. He seemed to go on walkabouts, cut in, killed it round the keeper. 2-2, and then but a few minutes later, I don't know what happened on this one. Like, it seemed like the whole team disappeared. did the glitchy thing. Ball down the right, played out to Reece James. Cross in, like he had acres of space. Toffolo seemed to gesture for offside. Absolutely not offside. He was being played on by multiple people. Crossed it over. The goalkeeper seemed to be at his front post. Didn't expect it to go over the top of him. Went over the top of everyone, and Nicholas Jackson nodded it in for 3-2. So at three stages through the afternoon, Forest was stayed up when they were 1-1, when they were 2-1, and when they were 2-2, and we managed to throw it all away and leave it technically down to the last day. But yeah, 3-2 loss, entertaining, but kind of shows the frailties of Forest this season. Just to kind of put their foot on the ball and ride out the kind of push back, as it were, from another team, but yeah, so disappointing, probably safe, but not fully. Yeah,
a bit. It was a bit like I say. I only got bits of the game, and it seemed that it went from 2-1 Forest to 3-2 Chelsea in what felt like a blink of an eye. And it may well have been like 10 minutes or something like that, but it literally was a case of I went out and came back in and it was 2-1 to Forest, went back out again, came back in again, and yet somehow Chelsea had scored twice, and it was just a baffling sort of game. Like you say, obviously, technically it goes to the last game of the season, but it would take an unprecedented turnaround of goal difference. So it's not. We're not saying that it can't happen, but it's very unlikely that it will happen. So you'd like to think Forest know that they only need a point to be absolutely certain going into the last game. So nothing stupid. Keep it nice and tight at the back. If anything, play for the 0-0. That's all they need to do. Basically, just don't do anything stupid when it comes to next week's game.
Yeah, I think it sounds. Well, obviously we'll get to predictions in a bit, but Burnley are as good at defending as Forest are. So I think there's every chance. I think they're going to come out like absolute, like dam busters, kind of absolutely fly out the traps kind of thing. So it could be either to Forest just to kind of like try and pick them off. I think. Yeah. Obviously we'll talk about the predictions in a bit.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. So predictions wise. as he has been prone to doing all season so far, the most optimistic of us was Mr. Cook, who had gone for a 2-0 Nottingham Forest win. Does console himself, however, with the fact that he did predict Wood and Hudson-Odoi to score, so got himself a bonus point there. The rest of us did predict Chelsea wins, however, so we all get points for that. Myself and Stuart both gone 2-1. I had Hudson-Odoi and Madueke and Palmer with the goal scores, with the goals. So I just get the one bonus point for the Hudson-Odoi goal. Stu had Owonyi, Palmer and Jackson with his goals, so gets a bonus point there for Jackson. Matt, however, had obviously he'd obviously seen it. He obviously knew it was a Forest game at the City ground. Therefore, it was obviously going to finish 2-3. So gets himself 2 points for the correct score there. Sadly,
16th time.
How many times is this season?
It's 16 times in 2 seasons. So over the space of what? 76 games?
So this isn't just at the City game, this is just in the Premier League as a whole.
Over the Premier League as a whole, for the past the 2 seasons that Forest have been back up, 16 games they've lost 3-2. So
that is outrageous.
We're at nearly 25% of the games that we played have been 3-2. So, yeah.
I tell you something, it might be frustrating at times, but you can't say they haven't given value for money in some of them games. It's a do that.
I mean, Chopper in the Hull chairman, and apparently that's what he wants, kind of thing. So,
well, we'll see at a later date to be discussed. Yes, sadly, neither have Aina and Owonyi scored for Forest. Palmer didn't score for Chelsea, but Jackson did. So Matt gets himself a bonus point for the Jackson goal. So that's 1 point for Andy from the game, 2 points for me and Stu, 3 points for Mr. Moore. Our final game of the week, not to date the podcast in any way, shape or form, of course, took place yesterday evening, where Tottenham Hotspur took on Manchester City. Manchester City went into this game knowing that a win would put them back top of the Premier League and leave them in the position knowing that if they were to win on the last day of the season, they would win the title for the 4th season in a row, something which no one has achieved in top flight history. The best is 3 in a row, which is done by about 5 or 6 teams, I believe, at this point in time, one of which is Man City, obviously, because they're on 1 in a row as we speak. Tense game, this one. Started off quite cagey, 0-0 going into half-time. And then in the second half, Spurs had a couple of chances, but it was Man City that did in fact take the lead on the 51st minute. I believe it was Phil Foden. Did well to win the ball back on the left-hand side, clipped the ball over to the back stick where Kevin De Bruyne was there. He had a couple of bites at the cherry and then managed to sort of wriggle free, get himself to the byline and cut the ball back to about 2 yards out, I'd say, where Erling Haaland was just arriving on the scene, as he has done several times in his Manchester City career, to open the scoring. Spurs actually had a chance to equalise on about the 86th minute when Heung-min Son was clean through. There was a slip from Manuel Akanji, and Son was pretty much clean through with just the keeper to beat. This was the substitute goalkeeper, no less. Ederson had been taken off just after the hour mark for a heavy collision that he'd had with one of the Spurs players. I'm not entirely sure who it was. But Stefan Ortega Moreno had come on in Ederson's place and obviously found himself one-on-one with one of the better finishers in the Premier League in Son. But stood up tall, managed to make himself big, and indeed did save the effort from Son to keep the game at 1-0 Man City. And City put the game to bed in the 91st minute when Jeremy Doku picked up the ball on the left-hand side, managed to work his way into the box, drew the challenge from Pedro Porro. Pedro Porro it was. He sort of did him with the eyes, faked to shoot, and then just at the last minute just cut the ball away from him. Took the challenge and rightfully went to ground to get the penalty. So on the 91st minute, Erling Haaland was still on the pitch this time. So stepped up, put the ball on his foot confidently and rifled it in the top left-hand corner to make it 2-0 to Manchester City and all but sew up yet another Premier League crown. Predictions-wise, we all get points on this one as we all had varying degrees of Manchester City win. I had 2-1. Strange enough, I had Son to score for Tottenham, so that would have been nice if he could have stuck that one away when he was clean through. And then I had a goal apiece for Haaland and Foden, so just one bonus point for me there. Stuart and Matt had both gone for 3-1 to Man City. Stuart had gone Son, Foden, Alvarez and Haaland. Matt had gone Richarlison, Silva, De Bruyne and Haaland. So bonus points there for me. Bonus points there. Yep. So for me, Stu and Matt each getting 2 points from that one. Andy though, he's done it again, ladies and gentlemen. He's pulled out a 2-0 with Haaland and Alvarez. So 3 points there for Mr. Cook for his bonus point for his Haaland goal score, which means after the 3 games this week, Stu 5 points from those 3 games. Myself and Andy 6 points in those 3 games, but taking the week with 7 points in the 3 games. Matthew Moore, well done, sir. See, when he is on the podcast, he can still win. It's impressive. It's very impressive. So, after all those weeks, we come to the end of the season, the last games. Burnley versus Nottingham Forest, as we discussed earlier. Manchester City versus West Ham United. Lots to be decided. Obviously, like we said, Forest can technically still be relegated, but it would take a huge swing in goals. I believe we're probably going to do a little bit of chatting around the sort of the ins and outs of these ones. So before we do predictions, we are just going to step away momentarily, just take a quick break. We'll come back to you with our predictions for those 2 games in just a second.
Recording in progress.
And just like that, we're back. So yes, as we discussed, 2 more games left in the season. The first of which sees Burnley taking on Nottingham Forest. Now, as we discussed earlier in the podcast, obviously, had Burnley done what they needed to do and beaten Tottenham last weekend, this would have made this game a lot more, I don't want to say interesting, because I don't think Matt would appreciate the way that I phrased that. It would have been a lot more nail biting because it would have literally been not winner take all, but it would have been a case of had Burnley won last week, they would be in the position where going into this game they would know that a win would keep them up at the expense of Forest. As it's turned out, obviously Burnley didn't get the job done against Tottenham, and then found themselves too many points cut adrift, and are now back down in the Championship. So, obviously, the only negative that Forest obviously see on themselves in this game is the fact that there is still that mathematical possibility that relegation can happen, but it would take, as we discussed, a 13-goal swing to get the goal differences to a point where it would be in Luton's favour.
Yeah, I just think if they end up on the same number of points, I know technically, we had 4 points deducted, but if we finish the season on 29 points and the same as Luton, which I expect, then that is not a good season, and no one can colour it any other way. Staying up with 29 points, and kind of obviously we'll probably do this in the end of season review thing. But staying up with 29 points with the quality of the teams that are coming up, if we have another season like this one, we'll be down by March. It just won't even be it'll be an awful season.
Yeah, I think the main issue that would be sort of worrying me at this particular point is the fact that next season the 3 that come up aren't going to be as weak as the 3 that came up this season. Saying that, we don't know what's going to happen with Leicester's points deduction, I suppose, at the minute, which is the only thing that's sort of hanging over that.
Well, you've got Leicester, and apparently Leeds aren't particularly solvent /
Yeah.
their money situation. Like, I don't quite know what their what their finances were last year. They've not been mentioned with anything, but I think it's a little bit tighter. And obviously they've got the kind of thing that Forest had of, yeah, you can lose 35 million, but then now they've dropped down to the Championship, so they can only lose 16 million this year. So then that takes them to 86 million. So, you know, the losses are kind of significant. It's whether they can ship people out and do their thing, but yeah.
It will be interesting to watch, let's put it that way. So we obviously don't know who's going to be starting the season and what points deductions or transfer embargoes. You just don't know. But anyway, we'll give some predictions for this game. As I said earlier in the podcast, I think for me, it's for Forest. It's just a case of don't do anything stupid. Like don't like find yourself at half time down by 3 or 4 goals and starting to think if Luton can sort of find out about this and find themselves 3 or 4-0 up, it goes from being a 13 goal swing to like a 3 goal swing or something like that, and it becomes infinitely possible, and you're into damage limitation time. So I do have predictions from Mr. Woodmansey. He did give me some predictions before he was indisposed this evening. So I'll give mine and Stu's predictions. We'll then get Andy's and we'll go to Matt last, obviously, because it's his team. So Stu's going for a 2-1 Forest win on this one. I believe his exact phrasing, let me just find it. It was... Can't do it from the old fat digits. Burnley seem to only score 1 goal per game. Forest seem to be a bit more potent. He's gone for Vitinho to score for Burnley. And a goal apiece for Awonyi and Wood. He said to redeem himself for Forest, probably a shinner or in off his arse or something like that. Obviously, because he's missed quite a few big chances in the last couple of weeks in his previous games. Obviously, Chris Wood did, of course, play for Burnley for a spell as well, so the old boy rule would absolutely be in effect. I disagree. I've just got a feeling about this game that even though Burnley can't get anything from it, I think Company will probably say to him, listen, last time these fans are going to see a Premier League sort of game, let's go out with a bang, let's give them something to sort of remember. So I have got Burnley to win 2-1 in this one. I've gone for a goal apiece from Brun Larsen and Sander Berg. And I've gone for Hudson-Odoi to get the Forest consolation. Andy, what have you got down for Burnley versus Forest?
When you were reading Stu's out, I thought he'd been peeking over the old shoulder. Obviously, knock off that Burnley goal. We don't need that. That's absolute nonsense. But the rest was absolutely nailed on. A 0-2 Wood and a Awonyi.
Go on, Matt. What do you reckon? How do you see it panning out?
I think I agree with yourself in some ways, and agree with Stuart and others. I've gone for a 3-3. I just think that I've got a feeling it's just going to be absolute chaos. As we said, Burnley are going to go all out to try and put on a performance for their last game of the season. Company has been a bit like that all year, kind of thing. And I think on the Forest concede goals, but then we also score them. So I've gone 3 each. This is not me being kind of daft. Genuinely, I could see it being like a high scoring kind of game. So I've gone Brun Larsen, Berg, and Amdouni.
Larsen, Berg, Amdouni. Yeah, and your Forest goal scorers?
I've got Wood, Alanga, and Awonyi.
Which means our final game of the season sees Mr. Cook's adopted side, Manchester City, taking on West Ham United. And as we discussed earlier in the podcast, they know absolutely everything they need to do here. They know that a win is all they need. If they win the game, Arsenal can't catch them. They will be home and hosed in their quest to become the first English side to win 4 top-flight titles back to back. Obviously, it's Mr. Cook's side, so he will give the last prediction of the league season. Stu's gone for a 4-1 win. Doesn't see any sort of hiccups here for Man City. He's gone for two goals for Mr. Erling Haaland, a goal apiece for Foden and Gvardiol. Seems like he can't seemingly stop scoring at the moment. And a consolation goal for West Ham from Jared Bowen. I kind of agree. I've gone for a 3-0 Man City win. I've gone for goals for Haaland, Alvarez, and I think if they're 2-0 up and cruising, I think it could be one of the games where he starts giving some of the younger players a little bit of a run out, so we might see an Oscar Bob appearance for a goal for me, so I've gone for Bob to get the third. Matt, what have you got down for Man City versus West Ham?
I read something earlier, absolutely hilarious. Piers Morgan's apparently tweeted that West Ham should go and win it for David Moyes. I think that happened last week at the London Stadium. The notorious Arsenal fan and general cockwomble Piers Morgan motivating West Ham for the good of David Moyes. Prick. Man City. So I've gone Man City. I've gone with the same as you. Man City 3-0 win. I've gone dead simple. Haaland, Silva, and Foden.
Haaland, Silva, and the man of the moment, Mr. Philip Foden. Go on then, Andy. To your boys, last game of the season, barring the cup final, obviously, which we'll come to, obviously, next week. How do you see it panning out? Dare I suggest that we might have already heard your prediction for the last several weeks?
You see, what I was going to say was, at this point in time, it's my last opportunity, in theory, to say the scoreline I pick on a almost weekly basis, as long as there's no, injuries and stuff. So yes, it's a 2-0 for me, with Haaland and Alvarez to score.
Lovely stuff. You can set your watch by this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. It's lovely and we love to see it. So there you have it. That is our week 42 predictions in the book. As we said, obviously, there is one more game yet to come this season on the schedule. It is the FA Cup final, which does contain Mr. Cook's adopted side, Manchester City, against potentially his actual side, the other half of Manchester, the red side. I assume we will predict that in next week's show after we've gone through the results from this particular weekend's fixtures. But until that point, all that's left for me to do is thank these two wonderful gentlemen for going through the ups and downs of their teams with me. Join us again next week, where we'll go through the results. We'll see if Forest did manage to avoid being on the wrong end of a 13-goal turnaround. Fingers crossed.
If that does happen, I won't be here.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Mr. Moore won't be making an appearance if the worst has happened.
We'll put the video of me running into the sea on the social medias just to show everybody what happened.
You know what? Would probably get clicks. It'd probably get some views. Let's be honest. But yes, thank you as always, these two gentlemen. Thank you to you guys for tuning in and listening to us. just the one or possibly two more to go for the season, and then we're done. It's been a long old slog, but we're nearing the end. It's almost over. I mean, it's been over for me for the past couple of weeks, but that's neither here nor there. Join us again next week, where we'll break it all down again. We'll go through all the ins and outs and ups and downs of Forest and Man City. Until then, though, take care of yourselves, keep an eye out for each other, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
So there we go. What do you think to that? A week of games gone, another week of games to look forward to, and then other games possibly further down the line, more than likely further down the line, but it will bring us to the end of the season. Whew. Wow. Before you go, so that you don't miss anything in the future, click that subscribe button, click a like while you're there, leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. There'll be a way to leave a review, I hope. Check out the website, thecookiecast.com. There we've got social media links and an email button for you to get in touch with us. That is it for this one, and tune in next week for what will be the end of the season. Maybe. Until then, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to these grumpy old men talk about football. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share and subscribe.